This is something that happened to me back when I was around 9 years old, and even now as an adult. I get chills just thinking about it. I'm not big on sharing personal stuff online, but with Halloween coming up, I figured it might be a warning for parents out there, or maybe just to remind kids that not every house with lights on is safe. Anyway, this was in the late 90s, in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. Our neighborhood was the kind where everyone knew each other, block parties in summer, snow shoveling in winter. But we had this one street that nobody really talked about. It was older, with bigger houses from like the 50s or 60s, and the families there kept to themselves. My mom was super strict about boundaries. We'd start trick-or-treating right after dinner, stick to our block and the 2 adjacent ones, and be home by 8:30 sharp. But that year, things went sideways. I was going with my 2 cousins, Tim and Lisa, who were a year older than me. Our parents thought it was fine since we were family and the houses were close. But honestly, they dropped us off at the start of the route and picked us up later. No real supervision. I was dressed as a pirate. Eye patch, plastic sword, the whole deal. Tim as a mummy with toilet paper wrapping that kept falling off. And Lisa as a ghost with a sheet that made her look like a floating bedsheet disaster. We had these orange plastic pumpkins for candy, already half full from the easy houses on our street. The air was that perfect, crisp fall night, leaves crunching, jack-o'-lanterns flickering, and groups of kids everywhere laughing and shouting, "Trick or treat." It felt magical at first, like we were on our own adventure. We hit all the usual spots pretty quick. Mrs. Jenkins with her full-size Snickers, the Andersons handing out homemade popcorn balls, which my mom always threw out later, paranoid about razors or whatever. By 7:45, our buckets were heavy, and we were debating heading back early. But Tim, being the bold one, spotted lights down this street. "Come on, just 1 block," he said. "I bet those big houses give out king-size bars." Lisa and I weren't so sure. Our parents had said to stay away from that street because it was too far and the houses were creepy. But we were buzzed on sugar and freedom, so we snuck over. The street was quieter than ours, fewer kids, and the decorations were over the top. Cobwebs everywhere, fake skeletons hanging from trees, and fog machines making everything hazy. It gave me this uneasy vibe, like the fog was hiding something, but we pressed on. About halfway down, we came to this massive old Victorian house at the corner, peeling white paint, a sagging porch, and windows glowing orange from what looked like a ton of candles inside. The lawn was a graveyard scene with plastic tombstones and a fake coffin propped open. An older guy, maybe in his 50s, was sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, dressed as a mad scientist, lab coat, wild wig, fake scars on his face. He waved us over with a big grin, holding a bowl overflowing with candy. "Well, if it isn't some brave little adventurers," he called out in this booming, theatrical voice. "Come on up. I've got the best treats in town, stuff you won't find anywhere else." We exchanged looks. It seemed legit. And who turns down extra candy? As we climbed the steps, he leaned in and whispered, "Tell you what, kids, if you come inside for a quick peek at my mad lab, I'll let you pick anything from my secret stash. Potions, treasures, you name it." I remember my stomach twisting a bit, stranger danger lessons from school flashing in my head. But Tim was already nodding like it was the coolest idea ever, and Lisa shrugged. The guy held the door open, and the smell hit us first, musty, like old books mixed with something metallic, maybe incense. Inside was dimly lit, walls lined with shelves of jars labeled Eye of Newt and Witch's Brew, probably just colored water and dry ice for fog. He led us to the living room, chattering about how he was a real inventor, and this was his Halloween setup. "Sit tight. I'll grab the chest," he said, disappearing down a hallway. We stood there awkwardly, the floor creaking under us, and I noticed these framed pictures on the wall, black and white photos of kids in old costumes, smiling stiffly, from like the 70s or 80s. Kinda weird, but whatever. Then Tim spotted a big wooden chest in the corner, carved with spooky symbols. Hey, maybe that's the secret stash. He flipped it open before we could stop him, and inside wasn't candy. It was a pile of kids' stuff, tiny shoes, backpacks, even a couple of those plastic pumpkin buckets like ours, all covered in dust. But the worst part? Mixed in were these creepy doll-like figures, dressed in miniature costumes. A pirate, a mummy, a ghost. They looked handmade, with real hair and glass eyes that seemed to follow you. One had a tag sewn on, Timmy, 1985. My Tim? No, but close enough to freak us out. Lisa gasped and slammed the lid shut, but not before the mad scientist guy came back, his smile gone, eyes narrowing. What did you see in there? He asked, voice low and sharp, stepping between us and the door. Panic hit like a truck. We mumbled excuses, gotta go, parents waiting, and bolted for the exit, but he grabbed Tim's arm, pulling him back. You can't just leave after peeking at my collection, he hissed. That's when I saw it, behind him, in the hallway. Shadows. More of those dolls lined up on a table, but they weren't dolls. They were too detailed, like taxidermy or something. Stiff poses, faded costumes, and name tags from different years. One looked just like a kid from the photos on the wall. We screamed and shoved past him, crashing out the door and down the porch steps, candy buckets banging against our legs. He didn't chase us far, just stood in the doorway yelling, "Come back, the treats are inside." But we didn't stop running until we hit the main street, hearts pounding, out of breath. A lady walking her dog saw us crying and freaking out. She was a neighbor from our block and drove us straight home. When we spilled everything to our parents, it was chaos. My mom called the cops right away, and they went to check the house. Turns out the guy was some recluse who'd lived there forever, and the dolls were just creepy crafts he'd made from thrift store finds. But the cops found old news clippings in the attic about missing kids over the years. Nothing proven, but he got questioned and eventually moved away. Our parents banned us from ever going near that street again, and Tim and Lisa's family even switched trick-or-treating to a different neighborhood the next year. We drifted apart after that, didn't talk much at school. The adventure soured into nightmares. I still check my candy extra careful every Halloween, and I never go to a house that invites you inside. I was just a little kid, small enough to hide behind the couch during scary TV shows when this happened back in 2008. We lived in a quiet suburb outside Seattle where Halloween was a massive community thing. Kids piling into cars for trunk or treats, houses blasting spooky soundtracks from boomboxes, and everyone hyped on the latest iPod playlists of Monster Mash remixes. My parents were pretty chill about holidays. Dad was in sales, always jet-lagged from road trips, and Mom taught elementary school, so she thrived on the kid energy. That year, Halloween landed on a Saturday, which meant no school the next day and a free pass to stay up late. They'd let me crash in the family room with a massive bowl of fun-sized Twix and Milky Ways from our earlier trick-or-treating haul. The TV hooked up to cable, blasting a marathon of old-school horror flicks on the Sci-Fi Channel. My older brother was at a friend's for a video game sleepover, probably grinding through the new Halo 3, so it was solo movie night for me, the glow of the screen casting dancing shadows on the beige carpet, while rain tapped steadily on the roof like it always does in the Pacific Northwest. It was pushing midnight, and I was half dozing through an episode of Goosebumps reruns, R.L. Stein's Dummy coming to life or whatever, when I caught the noise. A dull, repetitive thud from the backyard, like something scraping or bumping against the wooden fence that separated our yard from the vacant lot next door. That lot was a total eyesore. Knee-high grass, discarded soda cans from teens sneaking smokes, and the occasional skunk waddling through. I blamed the wind at first. October gusts were brutal, but my kid brain, fueled by all the TV scares, spun it into zombie apocalypse territory. Stomach nodding, I hit pause on the remote and crept to the sliding glass doors, pulling back the vertical blinds just a sliver. The backyard floodlight was off, leaving everything in murky grays from the street lamp spillover. But there he was, a hulking shape slumped right against the fence, rocking slightly. He looked like a nightmare, tall and messy in torn jeans and a flannel shirt caked in what shone wet and dark under the faint light. Maybe mud, maybe blood. His face was a mess, streaked with grime and crimson trails from what seemed like a nasty cut above his eye. And he gripped a heavy wrench in one hand, tapping it idly against the fence slats like he was testing for weakness. He mumbled to himself, low and ragged, words lost in the rain. This wasn't some costumed neighbor or a stray dog. He was real and terrifying. I stood there paralyzed, breath shallow, convinced he'd burst through if I moved. Then his head jerked toward the house, eyes, dark hollows in the low light, seeming to pierce right through the glass. I spun and sprinted down the hallway, bawling at the top of my lungs. "Mom! Dad! There's a creepy guy in the yard. He's bleeding and has a tool. He's gonna get us." Mom snapped awake first, scooping me up in her robe while Dad fumbled for his glasses. Probably just a nightmare from those shows. Crawl in bed with us if you want. But I was inconsolable, sobbing and pointing wildly. "I saw him, by the fence. All gross and scary. Please check." He rolled his eyes but caved to my hysterics, grabbing the big mag light from the nightstand and padding to the kitchen. Mom hovered behind, already punching 911 into the cordless phone, her voice turning urgent as the reality sank in. Dad flicked on the porch light and eased the slider open a few inches, beam cutting through the drizzle. "All right, see? It's just the yard kid. Nothing but puddles and..." He stopped dead. The light pinned the guy like a spotlight, late 30s or so, face ashy and smeared with blood from a deep gash on his temple. Clothes ripped from what looked like a bad tumble, wrench dangling loosely. He was clawing at the fence now, not aggressively, but like he was disoriented, trying to steady himself. Dad's jaw dropped. He shoved the door shut, locking it with a click, and hollered for Mom to stay on the line with dispatch. "Get back," he ordered me, then cracked it open again, shining the light steady. "What are you doing out there, buddy?" "This is private property. Back off." The man froze, squinting into the beam, his expression a mix of bewilderment and desperation. Rain dripped off his hair as he rasped, voice thick and slurred. The van spun out, lost control on the hill, need help getting home. Dad held firm, mag light unwavering. "Cops are coming, man. Sit tight. Don't come closer." The guy blinked hard, wiping blood from his eye, then peered past us into the dark yard. A spark of alarm hit his face. He dropped the wrench with a metallic clank and stumbled sideways, melting into the shadows of the vacant lot like he'd never been there. Dad barricaded the door with a kitchen island stool, and we clustered in the family room, me buried in Mom's lap. The phone's glow the only light besides the TV static. Sirens pierced the night about 8 minutes later. 2 officers pulled up in their cruiser, raincoats slick as they combed the yard with their own lights. After a quick sweep, they called it in, located him staggering along the cul-de-sac a couple blocks over, still muttering about the crash. From the police chatter we overheard, and the neighborhood buzz the next day, folks swapping stories over coffee at the corner Starbucks, he was Mr. Ellis from down the street, a handyman who'd been handing out candy at a block party earlier that evening. He'd knocked back one too many beers from the cooler, ignored his buddy's rides home, and piled into his van anyway. On the slick roads near the vacant lot, famous for that sharp curve, he hydroplaned, slamming into a guardrail. The impact busted his head on the dash, shredded his clothes on jagged metal, and left him concussed and wandering. The wrench was from his work van's toolkit. In his daze, he'd snatched it thinking it was a phone or something to call for help. No intent to harm, just a dumb, boozy accident amplified by the holiday haze. He got patched up at the ER, a night in holding for the DUI, and community service. No drama for us, just a stern warning to keep gates locked. The cops were reassuring, explaining it all with flashlights still bobbing outside. But the fear stuck. Dad stood guard till dawn, peeking every few minutes, while Mom rocked me to sleep on the couch. I ditched late-night TV marathons after that, stuck to my bedroom with the door wedged open, ears tuned to every creak. That wrench tapping, bloody silhouette against the fence, it spawned years of backyard paranoia. Even now in my 20s, I double-check fences before dark. Late 2000s small-town life had its perks, but that Halloween? Pure kid terror. A reminder that real scares come from slip-ups, not just screens. Keep your holidays lit, but locked, folks. I remember this like it was yesterday, even though it's been over a decade. It took place during my last year of high school in a quiet Midwestern neighborhood. Halloween that year was stormy, with heavy rain and wind that rattled the windows all evening. I had invited 3 close friends over since we had no other plans. We were just teenagers looking for something to do on that wet Friday night. My parents were away visiting family, so the house was ours. The group included my neighbor Nancy, who loved sharing ghost stories, her friend Tom, who always tried to stay calm no matter what, and Paul, who brought snacks and a portable DVD player. We decided on a simple evening of watching scary films in the basement rec room. It seemed fun and safe, away from the bad weather outside. We started around 7, after grabbing pizza from a delivery place. The basement had a comfy setup with an old couch, bean bags, and dim lamps. To make it festive, I lit a few battery-powered tea lights and pulled the curtains closed. The storm added a natural spooky feel, with thunder rumbling now and then. We picked a mix of movies, starting with one about a haunted house, then moving to a slasher flick. Laughter filled the room at first, as we pointed out silly parts and made predictions about what would happen next. Nancy jumped at a loud scene, and Tom passed around chips to keep things light. Paul set up the player, and we settled in, the rain drumming steadily above us. As the first movie played, the power flickered once or twice, but we ignored it. Midway through, during a tense moment where characters hear strange noises, a real sound came from upstairs. It was a clear thump, like footsteps crossing the kitchen floor right overhead. We all paused the film and looked at each other. The room went quiet except for the storm. I thought it might be the house settling or branches hitting the roof, but it felt too deliberate. Nancy suggested checking it out, but her voice wavered. Tom nodded, trying to act brave, and Paul grabbed a flashlight from the shelf. We headed up the stairs together, steps slow and careful. The hallway light was off, only the glow from a nightlight in the outlet guiding us. We moved toward the kitchen, the spot where the noise seemed to come from. Halfway there, another sound reached us, a soft, childlike hum, faint and unclear, coming from the guest room nearby. It lasted just a second, followed by a light clatter, like a book falling. Nancy and Paul turned back right away, hurrying down without a word. Tom and I kept going, hearts racing. I eased the guest room door open, shining the flashlight inside. The space was dark and empty, but in the beam's sweep, a small figure appeared in the corner, short, shadowy, almost like a child standing still. It did not move or make a sound. I pulled the door shut fast, and we rushed downstairs to join the others, back in the basement. We turned on all the lights. No one wanted to explain what we saw, but we all agreed it happened. I picked up the phone and called the local police non-emergency line. An officer arrived soon after, in a rain jacket, ready to help. I showed him to the guest room. He knocked once, then opened the door wide and flipped the switch. He searched the closet, Looked under the bed and checked every spot. Nothing. We went through the whole upstairs, bathrooms, closets, even the attic hatch. The house was clear. The officer said old houses can make odd noises in storms, especially with wind and rain. He advised locking doors and staying safe. After he left, we packed up the movies and snacks. We moved to the covered patio out back, sitting under the awning as the rain poured. No one spoke much, just listening to the weather calm down. My parents came home the next morning. We told them the full story together. They checked the rooms themselves and seemed to take it seriously, though there was little they could do without proof. My friends headed out after breakfast, and I spent the day uneasy. That night, sleep did not come easy. I never hosted another movie night like that again. That Halloween still sticks with me like a bad dream, and the memory of it still feels fresh after all these years. It happened in a small town in the Midwest, where our old rental house sat on the edge of endless cornfields, making everything feel isolated and quiet. That night was cold, with frost already touching the windows, and my parents had taken my little cousins out trick-or-treating, leaving me behind to sort through the garage for winter prep. I needed to stack tires and label boxes, something they said I was old enough to handle on my own while they were gone. The porch light was on, but it barely cut through the darkness, and since our place was way out on a dirt road, I didn't expect many visitors at all. Maybe just a neighbor or two if they were brave enough in the chill. As I worked in the garage with my flashlight, since the overhead bulb kept flickering out, a sharp knock came from the side door near the driveway, sounding like someone rapping hard with their knuckles. I wiped the grease from my hands and walked over, peering through the peephole, to see a tall figure standing there in the shadows, wrapped in a long black cloak, with the hood pulled low. His face was hidden behind a white clown mask, the kind with a wide painted grin and fake tears running down the cheeks, and he held out an empty backpack that looked worn and sad. There was no one else around, no car lights in the drive, just him shifting his weight in the cold wind. It struck me as lonely, being out there alone this late on Halloween, so I felt a bit sorry for him and cracked the door open a little. I had a bowl of small candy bars ready, the cheap ones we'd bought at the store, and I poured a good handful into his bag, saying, "Take some, it's okay." He tilted his head slightly, the mask staying perfectly still, and stepped a bit closer for a moment before turning away and heading toward the backyard fence without saying a word or even a thanks. I shut the door, locked it firmly, and went back to sorting the boxes, figuring he was just a shy kid as the wind howled outside. A few minutes later, while I was hauling a tire into the corner, a rattle came from the back mudroom door, the one we used for muddy boots and outdoor gear, banging once as if caught by a gust before settling down. I paused to listen, but the fields beyond were silent with no cars on the gravel drive, and my heart started beating a little faster as I wondered if the wind had really done that or if something else was going on. Setting the tire aside, I crept inside the house and flipped on lights as I went, finding the mudroom empty but the door standing ajar, letting in cold air that carried the smell of wet dirt from outside. Had I forgotten to lock it earlier? Or had that clown guy come around the back? I called out for my cousins and then my parents, but only the creaks of the house answered, making the silence feel heavier. Grabbing the cordless phone from the kitchen counter, I dialed Mom's cell and told her the back door was open, and I thought someone might be out there, though she brushed it off as probably just the wind and said they were on their way home soon. Still, I didn't feel right about it, so I paced the hallway with the phone in hand, waiting and straining to hear anything unusual. Then a soft scrape echoed from upstairs, like something shifting around in the attic above the landing, where we kept all the old junk like boxes of clothes and holiday decorations covered in thick dust that no one ever bothered with. The attic stairs pulled down from the ceiling and were secured with a latch, so no one should have been up there. but the sound came again. A thump like boxes tumbling over, sending a chill through me as I stopped in the hall, too scared to go any higher, but knowing the front door was across the open space. Holding the railing tight, I whispered into the phone for Mom to hurry, and as I climbed halfway up the stairs, the latch clicked open with that unmistakable metal-on-metal sound. A white shape appeared at the top, the clown mask peering down through the gloom, the cloak draped over the edge like a shadow, standing completely still with the painted grin frozen in the low light from below. It didn't move or make a noise, just seemed to wait there as if expecting me to come closer, and I felt sick to my stomach. Backing down the stairs quickly and almost tripping before running to the basement door off the kitchen, where I locked myself in and pushed a shelf against it for good measure. I texted Mom over and over, saying I saw the mask in the attic and to come fast, and they pulled up the drive about 15 minutes later, with Dad yelling my name while Mom got on the phone with the sheriff's dispatch. I cracked the basement door and told them everything in a rush, my voice shaky, and Dad grabbed his rifle from the truck before we started checking the house together, starting with the mudroom, then the stairs, and finally the attic. He yanked down the pull stairs and shone his flashlight up there, finding the boxes all messed up with a backpack strap caught on a nail, but no one hiding anywhere. We looked in every closet, under the beds, and even the crawl space, coming up empty each time. And soon the sheriff's deputy arrived in his cruiser, his boots thudding as he checked the vents, windows, and every corner. He found boot prints in the mud outside, leading from the fence to the door and then stopping abruptly in the field, and figured it was likely some drifter using the holiday cover to slip in for warmth or whatever he could find, getting spooked when he realized someone was home. There was no theft or harm done, but he took notes and warned us to lock up better, especially out in the country where strangers sometimes wander in bad weather. My parents were upset about the whole situation, but not at me, and they double-checked everything again before bed, noting that the mask was real porcelain, not some cheap plastic toy, left behind in the attic like a weird reminder. After that, I got in the habit of locking all the doors and even the windows, and I never stayed alone at night anymore, realizing how the isolation out in the sticks could turn a quiet holiday into something scary.